On Monday, Florida proved that their eventful summer of recruiting is not over yet, as Billy Napier queued up his patent sunglasses emoji to welcome the arrival of Marrero, Louisiana cornerback Wardell Mack in the 2024 class. The highly regarded four-star chose the Gators over Texas, LSU, Florida State, and will occupy a major role in the Gators defense in the future because of the highest caliber coverage skill set he brings to the table. But on this show, rather than just telling you about the traits that Mack will bring to the Gators, we believe in treating this like a kindergarten class on a Friday. We're doing show and tell. It's time for a little Wardell Mack film breakdown, plus a little Gators recruiting update here on Carroll's Cadence today. Before we get into all that, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment who you'd like to see commit to the Gators next. Whether it's in the 2024 class or the 2025 class, I'd love to hear who is one of your top targets that Florida is pursuing that isn't already in a potentially program-changing class for Florida in 2024. So to get started, I just want to say really quick that Mack is a very talented cover cornerback in this cycle, and he remained in frequent contact with this staff since they offered in March. This is a staff at Florida that has several ties back to Louisiana. You look at, obviously, Billy Napier coming over from Louisiana Lafayette, bringing a lot of guys along with him, and then also having Corey Raymond, a LSU staple for really the 2010s decade, coming over and being their cornerbacks coach. The two sides showed considerable interest, mutual interest from that point when they originally offered in March. But there was some size, height concerns on Florida's end regarding Mack that I think could have made this process play out just a little bit longer than it could or should have. At one point, he was measuring in under 6 foot with a slender frame that's very different from what Corey Raymond's really targeted when going out and looking for his elite talent at cornerback, which he has had really since he was, has built his name with LSU dating back to, like I said, the 2010s decade. Most of his targets are 6'2", 6'3", wide stretching wingspans. Jakeem Jackson, for example, is a great person you can kind of pinpoint there. But Wardell was measuring in at 5'11". He just looked to be just below that threshold that they look for. They're always talking about height, length, and verified speed as the three major criteria for really any position on the field, but especially at cornerback. But he returned to Gainesville for the cookout in the end of July, I should say. And he measured in at 6'1.5", which I think was the point where they said, all right, this is a game of inches. That measurement is enough for us to say you get the green light. And as soon as that green light came, I don't think it took much time for Mack to at least silently commit to Florida, based on that picture of him that he posted not too long ago of him throwing up the Gator chomp with all the other commits. I'd say he made that decision rather quickly or almost immediately after receiving the green light from Florida. But even if he is 5'11", I have long been on the Wardell Mack train. I love this take from Florida's perspective. I think he's a long-limbed, relative to his size, corner for the next level. Has elite athleticism. I think his ball skills are top tier. He's nuanced in technique, can play both man and zone coverage, and that's not often seen at the high school level. Usually it's one or the other, and they're usually winning off pure athleticism. But I think Wardell Mack kind of brings all of those things together. And I think they look for him to do a lot of things for this Florida team that fits the criteria of what Raymond's laid out, even though he is probably 2 inches smaller than a lot of other guys we'll see them take. The versatility, the athleticism, just the understanding of what other guys want to do on the opposite side of the football, knowing how to play this cornerback position, but also having history playing on the other side at wide receiver. Those are all things that Corey Raymond absolutely loves. And as a result, I think Florida fans are going to love Wardell Mack when his time gets going. So today, we're going to take a few minutes to just look at what Wardell Mack does well as a cover corner. We're going to start right here. So Mack is a multifaceted coverage man, like I said, and he's able to play both zone and man at a high level. I think that's something Florida struggled with at points throughout the past few seasons. They've just had an issue finding guys who can do both at a high level. Jason Marshall Jr., incredible press man cover corner. can sometimes struggle when working in zone. But Mack seems to have at least a pulse in both areas, which will really help Austin Armstrong as he starts to take over this defense. Because Austin Armstrong loves to play press man, but he'll also throw in a heavy dose of cover 3. And with Mack being able to do both, I think that there is a niche for him in the future of this secondary. So you look at this play here as John Ehret lines up, and I love how John Ehret plays because it shows that Mack can translate into the Gator system. It's very similar in that they throw several different looks at teams. They like to play press man, but they can also play cover 3, which is what they're in here. One thing I will say, if you look at these cornerbacks, this secondary, the members of it, a lot of guys have their eyes on the quarterback, whether they're lined up, over top of a wideout or not. And you can tell in this scenario that there is a zone coverage going on. Wardell Mack at the bottom of the screen is eyeing the quarterback instead of, playing straight up, head up with his wide receiver. And you'll see guys, if they're going head up, they're going eye to eye with the wideouts. That's man. It's the opposite for zone. If they're looking at the quarterback, it's most 99% of the time going to be a zone coverage. So here, Mack, having his eyes in on the quarterback, is going to step and take his drop right off the snap. And as the snap happens, obviously you see the two guys that were showing pressure from the second level drop back into their flat zones, into their shallow zones underneath. Max dropping back into what is going to be his deep third, but with only one wide receiver to work with on this side of the field, he doesn't have to bail as much as the corner on the opposite side of the field does, knowing that he has several guys working potentially over this other shallow corner on his side of the field. So with Matt kind of on an island over here, he's playing this wide receiver, even though it's technically a zone coverage. So he's going to drop back, find his depth. And before this ball even comes out, Mack is already starting to make his way forward, knowing that this wideout's running kind of this, he's working inside. It's a inward crossing route, inward cutting route. And he shows excellent closing speed and being able to break on the ball, is able to kind of come over the top of this wide receiver and make a play on the football. And I think that the biggest thing is he just understands his assignment. He understands what the offense is trying to accomplish. And as a result, when he's able to diagnose how this team is looking to get, how to move the football, it's a third down it's 3rd and 11 here. So Mack knows he can't give up the sticks, but he's able to work forward to create a pass breakup and get the defense off the field, which is just a beautiful rep from him working in zone, being able to read the quarterback's eyes, knowing that he's on an island and there's only one guy that he has to be responsible of, and having the ability to move forward and make a diving play on the ball with it being 3rd and 11. That's something that I think is a very high caliber rep from Mack there. Then play 2, we get into his man reps. This is very similar to what we'll see from Wardell Mack when he's playing in press man. He's not limited to playing in range. That's one thing that you're not going to see. Honestly, he's probably better as a press man corner. And despite his size, he is willing and able, has the desire to play with physicality off the snap. There's no shying away from the bump and run game. Nah. Wardell Mack is not that guy. He's not going to, throw out a half butt stab and then try to get back. He's not going to, kind of play this 50-50 in terms of he's going to be aggressive. He's going to give it his all. When he's playing bump and run coverage, he is playing bump and run coverage. And if you know anything about Corey Raymond defensive backs, how they like to play ball, how they like to hoop, it's being aggressive and playing physical at the line of scrimmage. That's their calling card. Just if you want to go see an example, go watch the Buffalo Bills on Sundays. Watch Tre'Davious White, former Corey Raymond disciple, someone that has worked under his wing. He is one of the most physical corners in the NFL. We saw a few years ago when Gronk had enough of him and threw a forearm shiver into the back of his head. It was because he was bumping him and touching him and just being physical with him every single play. And Gronk wasn't used to that, but he'll give it to you every time. And I think Wardell Mack, despite not being the same size, is still someone that plays in that fashion. So here Mack's in a traditional press man, 1 yard off the football, eye to eye with his assignment. And he's trying to, the goal of playing press man is to try to disrupt timing with the quarterback and the wide receiver, that pass catcher connection. Because you throw that initial stab, you're kind of working in a way that allows this, it inhibits the receiver from working through timing, because timing is such an important aspect of football, of playing the receiver position. You have to be in a certain spot at a certain point to be able to ensure that you're, open and able to kind of reel in these balls from the quarterback. But one thing I'll say here, and one thing I look at when I'm watching a man corner, is feet before hands. And I know a lot of people will ask, what does that mean? Well, it's really a tool that can be used at in multiple positions on the football field, but it's all based on the premise of momentum and players' momentum, players' balance, I should say. And it's really just a rule that basically says if Mack is playing in this position, and as soon as the ball is snapped, he is reaching forward and trying to punch, the first thing he's doing is throwing his hands toward this wide receiver. He's getting pushed forward. He is kind of moving onto the balls of his feet, onto the toes of his feet, which allow him to be thrown off balance and can allow the wide receiver to create leverage, stack him, or just really make it difficult for him to recover. He's having some wasted movement if he's trying to get back. But it's very subtle. But you want to go with feet beforehand. You want to make a move to set yourself before throwing any type of jab, any type of press at the line of scrimmage, just throwing hands into the breastplate of a wideout. So Mack very slightly right there kind of gives this initial kick step inside with his right foot, and it just lets the receiver start working in toward him. And it also sets his base for that initial stab, for that initial punch. It's subtle, but it's so important to this game. It's so important to his game. And it's just a flash of the technique and polish that Mack brings to the table. So then after kind of, working in being able to set himself, he throws his hands into the wideout, pushes him, creates that inside leverage, forces him outside the numbers, which could in turn, if it was a longer route, force him toward the sideline, kind of take him out of the play completely. But instead, this is going to be a kind of a comeback on this opposite sideline. Mack's able to stay hip, right on this receiver's inside hip, step for step with them, mirrors him perfectly. And as a result, he's able to make a play on the ball as it's arriving. So that's just another example of how Mack can be scheme versatile. Zone, obviously, on play one was, it was a great rep, and it shows that he can play there. Now a man coverage snap. And then we move forward to 45 seconds. He's playing out of the slot now. So not only is he coverage versatile, but he's positionally versatile. He can do several different things, and you can play him at several different spots. And this is another example of that. As here, he's playing out of the slot. He's playing probably a faster, just smaller wideout, not in the lanky kind of outside X receivers that he's accustomed to seeing. So naturally, he's going to play with a bit more cushion. He's going to let everything work in front of him. And again, he's able to make a read on the quarterback, have his eyes on the ball while playing in this man coverage. And he's able to, obviously, he doesn't make a play on the football, but he stays step for step with him, is able to play on that outside hip, and doesn't allow that inward cutting route to result in anything inside the red zone. That's exactly what you want from Mack in that position. So moving forward, there's just a lot of things that he does really well. There's another one where he's playing out of the slot, and he's able to kind of be that piece for them in so many different ways. At John Ehret, he is the guy. Like, when you're looking at tape for a high school talent, this is not a film study per se. This is a highlight study, because there's not a lot of bad tape out there from these kids. And that's the way that it's designed, is to put out highlights, to put out their peak performance. So you're going to want to watch, can this guy just be a dude? Can he just take over the game in these highlights that he's showing us? And I think Wardell Mack can, because now he's getting into the offensive side of the football. And a lot of the things he does offensively can translate to the defensive side. Yeah, especially as he's, anticipated to play cornerback. You want to look at, can this guy be a dude? Can he be a dude? Can he take over the game? Is he one of, if not the best athlete on the field when he steps on it. Mack is a dude. He's a dude. And you see it here as they hit him on the screen pass to the outside. He's able to just make a play happen. He's a playmaker for John Ehret, and they use him as such. They're going to put him in a position to make plays in crucial moments. They expect him to elevate their team, whether he's playing cornerback, whether he's playing wide receiver, whether he's playing wildcat quarterback. It doesn't matter. They expect him to be the guy at all points. And in his individual production, it's shown, at least in what we get to see here in this 4 minutes and 53 seconds. It shows that no matter which spot they put him in, he can excel, he can perform, and that translates directly to the next level. Whether that means that he's doing the same for Florida or he's playing his role when he arrives at Florida with a bunch of guys that used to be the dudes for their team. Number two, and really another thing that I want to look at, and we got to see in the last play, is really just you got to look for breakaway speed, straight line speed, track level speed, as a lot of people call it. Do they have the ability to chase down the ball, a ball carrier, to close in on different receivers when they're playing in coverage? Just things like that for the defensive side of the ball. In 2 plays, that's all we've shown here, it seems that he can. And then here we go again with him playing in this wildcat quarterback scenario where he's able to have a nose for the end zone, find pay dirt for John Ehret. So there's little things like that that are also important. Just having the ability to he doesn't have burner speed. He's not a burner by any means, but it's available within his arsenal for him to make plays in straight line, catch up to breakaway ball carriers and things like that. And finally, when you watch offensive tape for a defensive player, how does he operate with the ball in his hands? Can he make a play if he finds himself come away with an interception, find a way to take it to the house instead of just creating a takeaway in general? Can he find a way to pick up a fumble and crib it? Yeah, he can. He's shown it 3 times here that if he gets the ball in open space, he can make it happen, whether it's offensively on a play downfield, on a screen pass, a wildcat quarterback. He's shown that he can make plays. He can find pay dirt, and that nose for the end zone, that nose for with the ball in his hand shows that I think he can be a very valuable asset for Florida in the future, in this, in these steps forward for this program. He's going to be a crucial piece of their secondary. This is a major pickup for the Gators, all in all. This is a great pickup. I think there's growth needed within his frame, just from a stature perspective, just in how he fills himself out. He's still kind of lanky, which is going to need to change. And I think there is also some improvement needed in his handwork when he's working down the field. I think he's fine at the line of scrimmage, but I do think he can has a tendency to get a bit grabby at the top of routes. When the receiver's breaking, he tries to kind of hold them back and do some things there, which could get him penalized at the next level if it doesn't stop. But I do think that with Raymond's tutelage, with Raymond's teaching, that will be something that progresses forward. But like I said before, he's athletic, he's fluid, he's physical, he's functionally fast, great ball skills, he's scheme, positionally versatile, impressive polish. So he has the intangibles needed to be a legitimate contributor for Florida in their secondary 2 or so seasons from now. A major player for the Gators. And as I like to call him, Warden Wardell. He has the potential to be Warden Wardell because he's going to get guys on his island. He's going to lock them up, and he's going to make sure they stay there as long as they're on the same field. And just from a strict cover corner standpoint, he's been one of my favorite corners from start to finish in this class, regardless if he was going to be a Florida Gator or not. I'll come out and say, if he would have went to Florida State, I'd have said the same exact thing. If he went to ended up going to LSU, same exact thing. I think that what he puts on tape has shown me that he is a legitimate contributor at the collegiate level and a legitimate piece to be a potential cornerback 1 in this 2024 class. But with Mack now in that fold, there are a handful of guys that Florida is still looking at this stage. And I've said it before on here, the sweet spot for this team in 2024 is 25 commitments. They want 25 dudes in their class. And right now they got 22. With Mack, they have 22 guys in this class, committed to them in 2024. And I think that's something, and this is just before we've even reached week one of competition, week one in Salt Lake City against Utah. And that's something that I think we're going to see a lot more of in this NIL transfer portal era of college football. Classes are going to fill up much quicker. They're going to be rapid. You're going to see the summer months really being crucial for teams. What we see in the summer months are really going to be what teams bring in on signing day. The days of the long haul, taking till February to make a decision, I think they are dwindling. They are very close to being over. And sure, we'll still see a few guys take it the distance, but the number of prospects who wait, whether they announce in December or February on earlier National Signing Day, will only continue to dwindle as as we progress forward. Just because you look at this production that they put on for so long with early National Signing, that's going to be no more. And why do you ask, or why do you say that, Brandon? Why do you say that? Because I think we're seeing a time where there's the reality of the transfer portal being a factor that looms over the head of some of these guys that would normally wait until December or February. We're going to see teams say, okay, yeah, that's fine. All right, just keep waiting. This kid wants to play games. All right, cool. We can go snag a similar talent from the portal who's already developed and can play immediately. Why wouldn't we do that? He has one less year of eligibility. Cool. But he can contribute to our team right now rather than us having to wait and groom this guy for a year when we're not even sure if we're going to get him in the long run. So they lose a spot because they waited on a kid that ends up going elsewhere. So now they're just taking the kids that are very similar but might have one less year of eligibility just because there is a possibility that they might wait out this guy and not get him. So that also creates it on the flip side where kids are outweighting spots. They are outbidding. I don't want to say bidding, but that's really what's happening. They're outliving in their recruitment process the spots available for them at several teams of interest. And so as a result, there are a couple stars right now that can escape the reality of that college football, of what it is. Like if Jeremiah Smith was uncommitted, he could go all the way till the last possible day, and every team in the country would have a spot for him. Not one school would say, nah, we're good. But there's a lot of prospects that are going through this process. They're going to narrow down a school's list to officially visit in the summer, make their decisions soon thereafter, and ensure that one of those open spots that remain in July and August are actually available for them that wouldn't be available come December or January or February. So because of that, Florida has proved a beneficiary to that. They've been a team that this is what they wanted. And when they wanted this class to fill up early, they showed that when they front loaded it with the official visit schedule in the summer to then focus on football. And now there's just a few remaining stragglers that they're going to try to, just scoop up in the upcoming months. The guys that they sit back and say, yeah, we need this kid. Not guys that are, we'll take it. No, the guys that they're going to take moving forward are the ones that they feel are crucial to their success. He elevates his position. He elevates our program significantly. That's what Billy Napier and co are saying. And as a result, with 22 guys committed in this class, Florida's arrived in this straggler period of recruiting. And they're eyeing the elite must-have players to cap off a stellar cycle. And a few of them include Mainland teammates, defensive lineman LJ McCray and defensive back Zavier Mincey. Talk about two recruitments that have just been tiring in terms of being able to get a read on it. I've heard both good and bad things from Florida's perspective on both guys. McCray specifically, looks like that'll boil down to a Florida-Georgia decision. I think that those two are the ones seemingly jockeying each day for a lead in his recruitment. It's just a constant battle of, all right, how can we top Georgia? How can we top Florida over and over again? And with each passing day, I feel like that recruitment is getting tighter and tighter. And then in-state schools, Florida and Miami are also still or Florida State and Miami, I should say, are still in pursuit along for the ride in the mix. But I don't necessarily think they're on the same tier right now as the Bulldogs and Gators. but I do think it's possible for them to take that step forward into that spot. So that's one that's confusing. That's one that might take longer or might just pop out of nowhere that we aren't really expecting at this point. And then you look at Mincey, his teammate at Mainland, who at one point I would have got on here and told you, yeah, Mincey's a Florida lock. Mincey there's no doubt in my mind that he's going to be wearing orange and blue when he arrives at the collegiate level. But in the past few weeks or so, it looks as if the hard pursuits from Alabama and especially Miami have kind of swung that pendulum, if that analogy even works, in a 3-team race to kind of balance this battle all out and potentially swing it just slightly in favor of the Hurricanes at this stage in the 2024 class. And then you look elsewhere beyond Mainland, you have IMG Academy offensive tackle Jordan Seaton, who up until like 2 days ago was also just tight lid on his recruitment, wasn't allowing really anything to be leaked or wasn't saying anything much about where he was leaning. And I've covered Florida's recruiting beat for 4 years now, and I don't think I had seen such a tightly knit tight, someone keep his players or his cards as close to vest as Seaton has. And then like 2 days ago, he just decides I'm going to start tweeting. I'm going to start really enjoying the process, which is great for him. I'd do the same exact thing. I'd get on there. I'd have a great time if I was a recruit. I'm going to get this fan base to follow me, this fan base to follow me. I'm going to get everybody riled up and then make my decision when it comes. But just a few days ago, he's like, yeah, all right, I'm going to start putting out, start putting Ohio State stuff in my bio, start shouting out South Carolina fans, Florida fans, stuff like that. And so he's really taken a step into the spotlight in the past week or so. And it's really highlighted by a crazy fall visit schedule with official visits to schools all over the country. That includes one to Florida September 15th through 17th when Florida plays Tennessee on that Saturday. They'll have to blow that out of the water because right now the goal for Florida is to continue bolstering this offensive line on the exterior. Obviously, Fletcher Westphal, Mike Williams, Marcus Mazcol have all been able to do that. But Seaton's a top tackle in this class. He's going to have a spot up until the very end if he wants to take it. And Rob Sale and Darnell Stapleton need him to pair with Fletcher Westphal as a legitimate bookend tackle prospect to protect quarterback commit DJ Lagway in this 2024 class and moving forward. So I'm not sure if there's much basis for it, but I've felt for a while, I've had a bit of a gut feeling that I would say Seaton is in a good, or Florida is in a good spot for Seaton at this point. And I don't know why that is. Like I said, I can't necessarily put my finger on it of why I felt that way. But just because of how quiet he was up until a few days ago. And what I've heard from the relationship with Florida, why, how they've just remained on him and how he's responded to the relationships he's built within that building. I think Florida's in a great, great spot to land Jordan Seaton as a potential, like I said, bookend tackle prospect for their future. And then you look outside of the state of Florida to edge rusher Jordan Ross, set to commit Monday, and he's choosing between Alabama, Florida, Tennessee, and Texas. I think Florida at one point was in a really good spot here earlier in the summer, but after landing, Jamonte Waller and Kendall Jackson, they've cooled on Ross a bit because they have that jack spot kind of shored up at this point. We all know that Ross is incredibly talented. He's one of the most athletic edge rushers I've seen in quite some time. He just works into this, and it's not even just athletic. He's athletic, but he also brings the impressive physical traits to the table that a lot of teams have been looking for to piece together as, okay, this is a legitimate jack type player. Ross is a legitimate jack for teams that run that scheme. And while I think he can be a dominant edge rusher at the next position, there's been some concern about his pass rushing production, having just 2.5 sacks as a top 40 player in the country last year can be concerning, like just a little bit. But you look at that, and in recent weeks, I think because of that, Florida said, all right, if we, we're going to continue in contact, but we're just going to take a step back. If we get them, we get them. If we don't, we don't. And if I had to predict right now, I think Ross ends up with SEC East foe Tennessee Volunteers moving forward. Then obviously there's a potential for Florida to add a flip or two. Like I said earlier, every team in the country is leaving the door open for Jeremiah Smith. Florida is one of them. He's the best wideout I've seen come out as a prospect since Julio Jones, just in the way he's able to control his body, just separate from defenders, make contested catches, and really just do everything as a dude that's a verified 6'3", 200 pounds, and he looks like he's the real deal getting off the bus. You look at a guy like him, who is legitimately a day one starter. He is your wide receiver one as soon as he steps on campus. There's not a program in the country that would say no to him, and Florida is at the top of that list, where if he does decide Ohio State's not for me, which I don't think he will, I think he'll stick it out with the Buckeyes. But if he does, for some reason, decide I'm going to go somewhere else, I think Florida State, and just those two really are the two at the top for potentially landing a late surprise flip from Jeremiah Smith. But like I said, don't see it happening. And then you look at Alabama cornerback commitment, Jameer Grimsley from Tampa, who is one that they've pursued for quite some time. Got into it later before he kind of committed to the Crimson Tide, at least in terms of just a concerted approach. They had been talking and been involved with Grimsley, but they just hadn't pushed him the way that is usually expected by that point when he's able to, or when he's eyeing a commitment. So I think he ended up going to the Crimson Tide, but Corey Raymond's not going to stop. He's not going to let up there. So really, Zavier Mincey and Jameer Grimsley are the two guys remaining at the cornerback spot to add to Wardell Mack and Teddy Foster in a class that they want to bring in three guys at this position. They want to bring in three dudes to participate and to kind of elevate this cornerbacks unit once a Jason Marshall Jr., Jaden Hill, etc. leave probably after this next year. And then you're looking at a potential for maybe like a Chance Robinson or another wide receiver to flip if they decide that they want him. But I think at this point it's been a little hot and cold, especially with Robinson specifically. And after getting TJ Abrams from FSU to pair with Dre Hawkins and Isaiah Williams, I think Florida feels comfortable with where they're at wide receiver right now, but they'll always leave the door open for, like I said, Jeremiah Smith. But outside of those few pieces left, I don't see them really targeting anybody else for the remainder of this class. This is a 25 to 27 player class for Florida, and they're calling it. Once they get to that threshold, once they believe that they've, out of those few names that I named, they've done their due diligence, and whether they've flipped some guys or gotten some other guys to commit, they're going to call it a day. They're going to say, all right, we are calling it. We are content with where we're at, and we are fine with taking those players in a top 5 cycle, which is what we've come to realize or come to know as a championship caliber haul for teams in college football. Top 5 recruiting classes are, if you're able to do it consistently, those are the teams that are the mecca of college football. Those are the Georgias, the Alabamas, the Ohio States every single year. So now Florida has their first top 5 recruiting class potentially since 2013. And as a result, whether they get some of these guys or not, I think they're content moving forward with what they have without reaching for a late 3-star that is kind of just floating that they think can be a development guy. I don't think they're in a position to take guys like that this year, and that's a good thing. So Florida is kind of wrapping it up here in recruiting. There's not much fireworks left for the Gators, but I do think that there is potential for them to get some of those big guys like an LJ McCray, a Zavier Mincey, and maybe a Jordan Seaton as well. So there's steps forward for Florida on the recruiting trail, but a lot of it is we're starting to really shift our focus toward the season, and so is the staff. Toward the season and the 2025 cycle you're going to see a big jump from 2024 to 2025 here for Florida's recruiting efforts, as they are really just maintaining the relationships they've made with the guys that they're pursuing, the handful of dudes left. And they're going to try to start it and replicate what they've done this year, if not build on it, for 2025. So thank you for listening to another episode of Carroll's Cadence. Stay tuned for shows every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And be sure to check out this past Wednesday's video with guest Zach Goodall. We broke down what to expect from the offense in detail in 2023 under quarterback Graham Mertz. So make sure to go like and subscribe to this channel, that video, and make sure that you're not missing out on this train that just keeps rolling, baby. We're on the road to 500 subscribers, and I can't be happier than to have all of you here along for the ride. My name is Brandon Carroll. This is Carroll's Cadence. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment below. Have a great weekend, everybody. I'll catch you Monday. Peace.